Yo, we right here. We in Chicago. We back. You know what it is. Go Defenders. It's your man, Naledge Born. We have an interesting episode today because, we're kind of missing most of the Go Defenders, and so like Aaron Rodgers, I had to call some audibles on the play, right? And so I had to bring some of the guests through that were supposed to be kind of auxiliary, but today they're gonna take the place of Jeff and Mario. Mario has a DJ gig today, and then Jeff is on the 55. I don't know where he's at in between St. Louis and Chicago, but I think we got a spirited conversation for you all today. First, I want to introduce our guests. I got the homie to the right of me who, is a childhood friend, but really we met through hip hop and like I always tell people he taught me how to rap. He don't want to take the credit for that, but it's real. This shit really happened that way, and I swear that's my story, and I'm sticking to it. I always looked up to him in the cipher. I never told him because you're not supposed to tell people that. But this is my man Raphael Greene, aka Fooch.
Yo.
He came here straight from Iowa, and man, he's representing, and I'm happy to have him here to talk. Say what up to the people.
What's up, y'all, man? Like you said, I'm Raphael, aka Fooch the MC. One half of the group Strangers of Necessity, old school Brainiac member, and this man says I taught him how to rap, but I think as the saying goes, steel sharpens steel.
That's real. So. Inspiration. and to the left of me I have Jewel Mitchell, who to me moves through the city on some Clarence Avon shit low key. You know what I mean? Like low key. Low key, because you move in the shadows. He moves in the shadows in a real way. Like, besides being like a financial guy who's kind of a dynamo in that space, Jew is also entrepreneurial. He moves in spaces of real estate. He moves in spaces of community investment. Low key, aren't you a founder of RSVP?
I was on Don C. Yep, Don C. You could say I was a founder. Came on, did all the infrastructure, helped them build that business. Yep.
Right, and and I think it makes sense that he's a kingmaker. He's the son of a kingmaker. You know what I'm saying? Your pops was the press secretary for Harold Washington, and I'm sure he did a lot more than that.
Yeah, that was his official title.
Yeah.
That was it. I think back then they would just take, it was like, all right, you do this, right?
Yeah.
He was a part of Harold's strategic team, and actually to tie. Interesting enough, he's working at Johnson Products. And George Johnson, who is the uncle of a very good friend of mine, John Monopoly. John, most known, a.k.a. John Monopoly. His uncle, my dad used to was head of communications for them. So that's how he actually ended up with Harold. Because George had donated, I think, a pretty handsome amount of money to Harold's campaign, somewhere in the neighborhood of like $1 million.
That's just crazy. So, and we talking about in the 80s.
80s.
So $1 million right now would probably look like...
Probably 7 or 8, maybe 10.
Right. And so, as we call ourselves, and I forgot Ev is back. Evan is back.
So what's going on?
Not that, I'm not trying to, slight my man's, but he missed the last episodes. So we're glad to have you back here. And I feel like we swapped you in and we swapped the other two out. So it's like weird. And I'm the only common denominator. So we got to figure this out. Maybe next episode, I'm going to take a vacation. But how you doing, though? You doing good?
I'm good, man. It's a family situation. Old man's good. So, it's he's hanging in there. So I'm glad back here. And you saw my little one running around back and forth. So she may make multiple guest appearances on the podcast. So,
I mean, well, that's apt and that's fitting because today we're talking about Black fatherhood. So, I think it's interesting. You talked about your father having health issues. My father had health issues in the last year. My father has Parkinson's, so it's like he has like a chronic illness that's never going away. And every now and then he has complications from it. So when I heard about what you were going through, I was like, yo, send my regards 100 times over. Because I know what that means to go through that. But that's also kind of why we chose this topic to a certain degree, is like not only do we have important fathers that are in our lives, but we also are fathers. Everybody on this panel right now is a father. And so I think us as, Go Defenders, I wanted to take it back to like a historical moment when we think about, what's going on, sweetie?
This is Savannah.
So Louis Farrakhan, during the Million Man March, I don't know if y'all remember, but he said something very poignant about like why black folks kind of are lagging behind some of their peers and their counterparts, even minority counterparts. And Common actually used that as an excerpt on his album where he said, like, we must fix the black family. Like, if we're going to move forward, we have to fix the black family. Right. And because it was the Million Man March, I think that was a direct message to the fathers and saying that we need to be more present, saying we need to take initiative, saying we need to love our women, raise our daughters, and be a lot more forthright with how we create the household and dictate the household. And I kind of wanted to get y'all opinions on that, like in terms of where we stand now, because that's a long time ago.
1995.
Right. So
October 13th, yeah.
So if we had to like assess, you know, and that's actually when the next episode is, but if we had to assess kind of like the progress of the black father or just even the misconceptions, what are some of the things that comes to mind when you think about that? I guess we can go from Ev on down and just figure that out.
Right. I guess in terms of misconceptions and the stereotypes that we're not around, the only time you see us is in having to do with child support. Like I cover sports at my gig, so you think about Antonio Cromartie, how like, you know, he was naming all his kids. He kind of struggled to like name the kids. He had like multiple kids, and like we're looked at as sperm donors, and like in many cases, some of us who are singles fathers like me, we're looked at as like someone who's like, oh, we're babysitting, but we never like looked at it as parents. And just think about that, like you're just like, I'm a father, I'm a provider, I'm someone you got to go to, and I guess for me it was kind of difficult, like being post-divorce and someone who grew up in a two-parent household and looked at it as like, you know, the first woman a father should the first man a woman should fall in love with should be her father. And in many cases that's not the case from one way or another. And I mean, it's like even being in court, like a lot of homies I talk to, like it's not me personally, but a lot of homies I talk to, like they just kind of like get like a bad rap because they're fathers, and everything is pretty much given to the mother. No shade to the mother. We talk about this stuff. It should be no shade to the mothers and everything else. But I'm just saying, like in terms of what goes on with us as men and as fathers, as black men, and the things that we want and we desire for our children. I mean, I don't think we get that fair shake.
That's real. I mean, you kind of have a different situation, right? Like, you are married, have kind of the nuclear unit, and the ill thing, I mean, just knowing your background, is you kind of reversed your narrative.
Completely reversed my narrative.
I think me and Ev had a narrative from our parents that we kind of reconfigured going forward, and I think you kind of did the exact opposite. So how do you feel about, you know, fatherhood and family, knowing, like, where you came from and where you are now? Like, how?
I feel like in my situation, I was the individual to try and reestablish the family fabric in my family because of the type of person that my father was, you know what I'm saying? And like, not saying he was a terrible dude, but he was terrible to my OG. You know what I'm saying? And I watched him basically treat her not like how she was supposed to be treated. So I knew when I got older that I never wanted to make whoever I was with feel like how I saw my mom feel.
Yeah.
And so in doing so, I tried to recondition myself. I mean, I was never taught how to love a woman. You know what I'm saying? I was not shown how to be a husband or a lover or a friend or anything in regards to another female. So I had to basically teach myself. You know what I'm saying? And I feel like in the situation that I'm in now, I feel like me and my wife are probably the closest we've ever been. And I mean, every relationship has its ups and downs. We've had our rocky points, but I feel like we are like really in tune and in line with each other. And I really feel like it had to do with me recognizing the error in my father's ways and trying to, like you said, just rewrite my own narrative, man. And I feel like now I'm revered, at least in my community, as a great dad. Like everybody sees me pulling up to the school, picking my kids up, or they see me at the dance recitals, and they see me at all these events, and they're like, "Damn, you're an awesome dad." And it's like, I pride myself on that. You know what I'm saying? Because my pops was not there. He wasn't at my basketball games. Dude didn't show up to my 8th grade graduation. So I wanted to be the exact opposite of that.
So if I'm not mistaken, what I'm hearing from you is like low key, where some people could take like the faults in the parents that they have and like run with them and make that an excuse to kind of recreate it. You made that fuel to like be the
to hold myself
opposite.
accountable, man. Yeah, it's like you can't live your life based on the mistakes of others, and you can't use that as an excuse for lacking in accountability as a man and as a father.
That's real. Has that shown up? We'll get back to that.
Right.
Because there's some things that I kind of want to touch upon with that narrative and thinking about like whether like you had some growing pains that you didn't realize you had to do in being with your wife and in like, you know, having daughters and thinking about like the things maybe you did before you got married.
Well, and I mean, as far as that goes, me and like my wife talk about this all the time, and the fact that like how I was raised by my father. He's a military man, very hard and brash and upfront. And I mean, I did take on a lot of that personality in raising my kids. And my wife pulls me to the side like,
you can't do that.
You can't be your dad in this instance just because you've shaken off some of the other stuff of him. You need to really look at how you're addressing your daughters. Like, you need to be more empathetic to their situations. They're females, you know what I'm saying? And so I do find myself like reverting back to some of that hard stuff when trying to rear my children, but then I have to realize like I'm not dude.
Yeah.
And I'm me.
That's real. That's super real. I mean, Jewel,
What's up?
I know a little about your narrative. I kind of feel like we come from similar spaces in terms of like coming into fatherhood and maybe like just feeling like maybe that wasn't what we wanted at the time.
My case was interesting. So I became a father at 33. I came from I guess you could say like divorce. My parents got divorced when I was like 12 or 13. Pops moved down on the Gold Coast. So I was basically living with him. Like my parents, but I lived with my pops. So in terms,
and that's different.
That's definitely different.
Yeah,
it's what my son's experiencing right now.
Yeah. I'm kind of, because I was like, I'm going with him. Like, you know what I'm saying?
Like, I'm messing with my dad.
Right. Yeah. So, which caused some challenges, I think, early on, because I was probably like 6th, 7th grade. And then, but yeah, when I was coming up, my goal was, I wanted to have a child within wedlock, and, kind of quote unquote do things the right way, so to speak. That's true too.
This is the complete definition of the topic.
For real. Working and dadding at the same time.
So, my experience was interesting in the sense that I was dating a young lady. We probably were dating on and off about maybe 6 months to a year. She got pregnant, so I was like, okay, I loved her. So I was like, we can get married. It was interesting. It's right around the time of the bank collapse in 2009. I was working on Wall Street at the time. And it was a lot. While she was pregnant, my kid lived with me till there maybe my daughter was 6 or 7. And then they moved back to where she was from, which was a smaller town in Michigan. So, and they've been pretty much there or South Bend for the last 10 years. Wow. So I had 2 kids with her. My daughter and my son, they'll both be 10 and 7 in the next month or 2.
Do you feel like the circumstances that you're in prevent you from kind of heading your household the way you would want to head it?
Oh, absolutely. Because it's it's an interesting scenario, and unfortunately, me and their mother don't have the most amicable relationship, right? So my thing with fatherhood is interesting because I've had to essentially fight within the American justice system for my rights as a father, which really is not designed to do.
No, it's not.
It's like actually designed the opposite.
Yeah.
They're used to going after
You presume
guys.
guilty.
Yeah.
Presume
They used to
guilty.
going after guys
Presume guilty.
for not paying child support or whatever, or, whatever the cases may be. But they're not used to guys being like, yo, I can't see my kids. She won't let me see my kids. So y'all got a whole building full of people chasing brothers down for money, but ain't nobody to call when she not letting you see your kids.
Right.
Word.
And that gets sticky, bro. Like that
It's
gets
very sticky.
It gets super sticky. I mean,
the police don't really want to get involved. It's a very unusual. It kind of challenges our justice system in a certain kind of way because your rights are being infringed upon. But because of motherhood and kind of how we view that in this society, the court systems defer to women.
I feel like
in cases like that. You know
I feel like in regards to what you're talking about, I feel like fathers are like black folks. Like in the way society views us based on stereotypes.
in the family court.
In the family court.
In the family
court,
father
yes.
is like kind of the stepchild of the situation.
Like there are these stereotypes and these stigmas placed on black fathers that the courts just ride and kind of just feel like this is who you are.
I mean, I think it's fathers in general, though. It's not just black fathers.
Just black fathers.
But I'll say this, right? Part of it is just what we're talking about. Like I have a homeboy that I went to school with who he said like the premise that somebody you created a child with is taking you to court automatically puts you in a certain
space.
Of course.
You know what I'm saying? Like there's other folks of other ethnicities that I don't want to stereotype, but from my experiences, they tell me we don't go to the court.
Yeah.
We never go to the court. We handle things with mediators.
Yep.
We handle things outside of court.
You should be able to.
And
as
the reasoning
adults.
for that is like once you're in the system, you're in the system.
That was a tough call for me, particularly based around what I do. And that being public information. In terms of, for me, like filing a court case where I'm the petitioner for visitation in the state of Indiana to see my kids, that was a tough choice. Because you're right, I basically had to insert myself into the system in order to pursue, the ability to be able to have any kind of meaningful time with my children.
That brings other issues. It's like,
of course.
And I'll say this. I mean, everybody's kind of shared their narrative. I haven't shared mine. Like, everybody kind of at this point understands that I was a touring musician at a certain point. And like during that time, I had my son when I was like 24. So I'm at the height of like not only my musical career, but I'm at the height of like my like chasing women. I'm just coming into money, just coming into a space where I'm who I think I am. I'm doing the job that I want to do. Right. And it's funny, like I remember my sister being like, this is the time where you're prey. Yeah. You think you're being a predator, but you're being preyed upon. And, I'm cocky. I'm arrogant at this time. I'm like, yo, what you mean? All right. I'm making music. I'm getting rap money. I'm good. Don't worry about it. She like, nah, it's cool. You'll see. Right. I met my son's mother in the club. You know what I'm saying? The whole vibe. Doing all of that. And so it was difficult because literally the first maybe 4 years of his life, I was like, he probably only knew me through like a screen, like Skypes, phone calls. So I think it was funny. My son doesn't even remember this, but when he was 2 years old, like he literally thought I lived in the computer screen. Right. And so when I saw him in person, he was like, wait, what? Like, damn. What? Like he kind of ran away. Like he was like, oh,
dude,
like,
how'd you get out of the computer?
Like jump back in the computer screen.
Right.
Wow.
But to put that in perspective, my parents have been married over 45 years.
Right.
And that's like nothing to sneeze at when we're talking about the black family and having a foundation. And so for a long time, I looked at that as like, yo, I had a very much a perfectionist attitude towards family. And like you said before, like I was like, wedlock is the only way. If it ain't that, I don't even, I kind of shunned everything that wasn't that. And so it took me a while to get over the fact that like my normal won't be my son's normal.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
I don't know. I was
it took
definitely-
me a long
I was definitely-
time. I think I just got over that maybe like 3 or 4 years ago.
I was kind of ashamed to say I had like a baby mama. Like, oh yeah, I got a baby mama.
Yeah. The connotation of that.
Yeah.
Just,
What that
it don't feel right.
what that symbolizes, or how you how you relate that to people, like, you know what I'm saying?
Or going, taking my son to school, and it's like, oh well, Mrs. Evans. It's like, no, that ain't. That's
Right.
Evans, or your wife was here. I'm like, that's not my wife.
Right.
But I hear you. Or my son is like, they like, oh, so kids are investigators.
Definitely.
So when kids are
way
hanging
smarter
out,
than they
like, wait
most
a
adults give
minute.
them
They
credit
like,
for, man.
so is your dad still? They ignorant. They like, your dad still with your mama?
Right.
Like, oh, they not. All right,
Well,
like that.
my daughters are. Yeah, she's told me she's having some challenges. Plus, my kids live in South Bend, Indiana, so the fact that they're in Indiana, me being a black man, I'd be like, me and Indiana don't go well together. So
I don't think any black man in Indiana go well.
Well, that's
I'm
where the
not
Ku. That's where the Ku.
I'm not
I mean,
gonna-
that is the Crown Point, Indiana, is where the Ku Klux Klan started.
Yeah.
Love,
So, I mean,
love to our
we're not-
listeners from Indiana, but let's be clear.
But.
There's a lot of racism going on.
It's like being in the South. It's funny, man. I saw a Confederate flag driving through Indiana one time. I'm thinking to myself, we north of the Mason-Dixon. Like, that's
Right.
weird.
Crazy.
All right.
That's deep when you think about it.
But gee, so to even take it back to this idea of the court system, I remember like getting served papers at a concert.
Oh, wow.
Word?
Yeah. And that
Well, you definitely were going to be there, so yeah.
Oh
That
yeah, yeah. Oh yeah. It was like they got a tour schedule.
That's why y'all rappers, man. It's tough for y'all. Man. They know where y'all gonna be at.
They gonna be on it.
But not even that, like, not beyond the embarrassment of that, like, just being in the court system. I just literally got, like, custodial, I got custody of my son, right? And so I've had custody of him for almost 2 years now. And the funny thing is, as much as they put you in that system, it's hard to get you up out of there.
Definitely.
You know what I mean? I had a document with a judge stamped, approved, child support over. They're still docking checks, still taking money.
Are you serious?
I didn't figure that out until like maybe this year. And like they're like, yeah, you got to file that with that's the county did that. So now you have to file with the state. Send the state the document from the county. I'm like, what?
Y'all don't talk to each other?
Y'all don't talk to each other? And they like, no, like one is criminal, one is civil.
Right.
Oh, jeez.
Well, remember now too, they're making fees, so
Oh
they're,
yeah.
They're not.
So during
they're not
that time,
incentivized.
it's a money grab.
Yeah, they're not incentivized.
It's a money grab. But like, I guess to put that in perspective and thinking about like how you said like fathers are sometimes treated as stepchildren in the system. Like I didn't have any knowledge of any of this going in. It was all trial and error because what I saw was a nuclear family. You get it together. Y'all work it out. I remember when my son was first born, I was just literally picking him up every weekend and handing her checks physically.
Right.
And I was like, why can't we continue that?
Right.
But it was like, nah, bro, you late this time. I'm going to court. And I'm like, but once you
Back
make
to that statement your sister made of you being praised.
yeah, but once you make that decision, and I don't even think she understood that.
Right.
Because now, like, we have to go to court every time there's a...
Yeah, they don't really understand. The females sometimes don't
You know what I mean? Like, there's a real thing. Like, once you're in the system, everything's in the system.
Now the state of wherever you all are is in your
Everything.
business.
Right.
Is
Like,
you, her, in the state of such and such.
if he wants to, he moved to Texas, we got to go to court for that.
Right.
He moves back to Illinois, we got to go to court for
Right.
that.
There's a
We wanna
judge
take
in it.
him-
Yeah.
Like, we got to switch holidays, we got to go to
Yep.
court for that.
Yep.
Like, all of this is like minute details that I could literally talk to you on the phone about.
Right.
Now I got to go to court for this.
Right.
And the court fees the lawyer fees, end up equaling out, like, to the point where you're like, why are we doing this?
Yeah. Oh man, I was in court. We've been in court 4.5, 5 years. I probably spent 15, 20 grand on legal fees.
Jesus.
Oh, easy.
I can see that, though.
That's not counting travel, because realize I'm filing in St. Joseph County.
Oh, yeah.
So I got to get to South Bend. And remember, I've lived, maybe not remember, but I've lived all over the country. So I'm flying in. I mean, so I'm taking time out from whatever I'm doing, and so forth and so on. So you're talking about probably like a $30,000, $40,000 endeavor just to be in court.
Well, I'll say this. and I'll ask you this, and then I'll ask you a very different question.
Okay.
Like, what motivates you to stay involved when there's so many moments where you probably could just excuse yourself and say this is a bill? You know, like, what actually drives you to continue forward and trying to get visitation and trying to go through all these hoops? And I don't want to make this even a bashing session on females.
No,
it's not what it is. I just kind of want our listeners to understand the logistical aspects of what modern fatherhood kind of is at this point. You know what I'm saying? Like, in a real way. Like, I think most people aren't this transparent about what they go through.
Yep.
So kind of what drives you forward and saying like, hey, like, this is, you know, something that I'm gonna do no matter what, and I'm gonna kind of try to fix this.
For me, it was like
Excuse me.
Legacy, as well as you know, for my kids, also to let them know that it was important for me to, at least for them to know how important they were for us to have a certain kind of relationship. And as I think they've gotten older and we kind of unfortunately become more aware of the circumstances, it's almost like, you know, they kind of know I have to take their mommy to court. I mean, you know, that a court
like,
is
that's
involved.
a part of it. Like,
Yeah, that there's a court involved in the decision-making process. There's a judge involved and so forth and so on. I mean, unbeknownst to me, I didn't want them that involved, but unfortunately they were involved. But yeah, so it's it's tough. I mean, it's been, for me, it's like I say, legacy, and it's the fact that for my children, I want them to have that relationship with their father. And to be honest with you, like, there's nothing more important to me, you know what I mean, is for that. So it's worth it. You know, and the time I spend with them is priceless. So it's worth whatever money or whatever other things I need to sacrifice time to see them. So, you know, that's how I look at it. Like, if it's not for them, then what is it worth it for anyway? Yeah. So I'll travel to the ends of the earth. And
that's real. And that makes perfect sense. I mean, like, I guess, and I'll answer this after, you know, I ask Fooch this question. I'm thinking, like, for you, are there moments where you're like, damn, I'm doing this? Like, I'm really creating something that kind of wasn't presented. There was no model presented. You know what I'm saying? Like, you're almost the start of a cycle break. You know what I mean? In terms of saying, like, this is what I wanted to do. I didn't necessarily have a blueprint. Were there trials and errors for you as a father trying to figure out that whole thing? So Fooch, we were talking about, like, kind of your experiences and thinking about, like, how you're changing your family's narrative and, like, how maybe there was no blueprint set forth for you. But I even was thinking about this during a little break. Like, you kind of did have blueprints because you were able to see kind of what our families, like your friends' families were doing. So I guess I'll even shift that question again. Like, how did kind of being around some of your friends and their narratives influence how you brought your fatherhood into your household?
Okay, so I would say I saw Dre's father the most.
That's real. Very real.
And I saw how he loved Miss Wiley. You know what I'm saying? And I knew that, like, I wanted my wife to feel like how Miss Wiley felt when Mr. Wiley came home from work. You know what I'm saying? Like, the interactions that they would have, even though he was there, you know what I'm saying? I could tell he loved her to death.
Yeah.
And I wanted to make sure that my wife felt the same way, you know what I'm saying? And I wanted my kids to see how I love their mother. You know what I'm saying? Because I think one of y'all said it earlier, is like, your daughters you are their first love. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like, and I feel like I probably don't have the best relationship with my daughters because of who my father was and what I took from him and how he raised me and being so hard and, I guess, like, unsensitive to their issues as children.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Because I mean,
military men usually are like super
straight
hard
edge,
body.
bro.
Like,
man,
you're
I
a little
remember,
adult. You're a little adult.
man, I remember my dad teaching me how to ride a bike, dude, and me constantly falling off and him just barking orders at me like, get up, you can, like, you know what I'm saying? It was harsh, bro, and I'm crying, like, because I'm busting my shit. So I just wanted to try and not be so hard, but I still find myself struggling with that, with my children, man. And like Linnell tapped me like, hey, baby, chill out. Chill. You don't have to be, what's the saying she says is don't shoot the skinny rabbits. You know what I'm saying? Like, don't stress over stuff that it don't really need to be stressed over. You don't need to be that adamant, mean dad over these certain issues. You know what I'm saying? So those are the things that I battle with now, is just trying to struggle with being a more empathetic, understanding father to the situations that my kids are going through. So I'm not just this brash, finger-pointing dad, like, do what I say, and you know what I'm saying?
The crazy thing is I wouldn't even know that. Like, that's the ill thing, and I kind of want, like, our listeners to understand that, like, yo, like, I think everybody right now is being super transparent about their situations and trying to let you guys in on things that happen. Because, I mean, I don't even think, it's rare that I even talk about my own situation and things that have gone on. But, like, as I've kind of started doing more mentoring, particularly with youth, young men, like, I've found that, like, that's almost one of the things that makes me tangible to them when I'm talking to them, where they're like, yo, so you went through that? You know, and it's like, nah, yeah, I definitely went through that. And like, they're like, oh, so your son is going through that and you got this going on and this going on. It's like, you know, I think growing up, there was like a pristine image that my mother and father put forward, not just for me, but like other people picked that up. And so it's like, oh, of course you're going to follow that narrative. That's what you're going to do. But life don't always work out like that. Exactly. You know, life can hand you some things. And so, Ev, man, I kind of want to hear a little bit. He's actively fathering right now.
Yeah, literally like right now.
He's actively fathering.
On the clock.
And so for our YouTube viewers, you're going to actually see him on the clock for real. But, you know, in terms of thinking about divorce, I think that's something that in the Black community in particular, we don't really talk about. So what was, you know, obviously it's not ever a positive experience to get divorced, but like, did you feel obligated to kind of stay just due to like social pressures or the way that the kind of like the narrative that's always painted about Black fathers, or even just in the Black community, what marriage means to us? How did that, how was that experience for you?
I actually wrote about it at work. For many of you that already know, I'm a journalist at the Chicago Sun-Times, and I actually wrote about that. Like, I actually wrote about like the first Father's Day, you know, post divorce, and it was a lot, you know, and obviously there was some emotional moments that's even like writing it, you know, and for me,
How long were you married?
I was married for about 5-6 years, but we had known each other for a long time before that. So it isn't like somebody I just met and it was like, hey, you know what I'm saying? Yeah. So somebody I've known for a while. And I think one of the lines in there that kind of got me and got a lot of other folks was like, will I be able to be the father to her that my dad is to me, still is to me. Yeah. And now it's kind of was like something you think about. Because you think about that as Black men, how it's like we like to be tough and think about things, but we kind of care about how we're perceived and how we're looked at. And that's kind of how it was for me. And it was around the same time as my career. It was like my career was going one way and my personal life was going another.
Yeah.
That's always the case.
Often goes like that.
Yeah, I was kind of that work-life balance is bullshit. Like, it's bullshit. Like, most people don't realize that. Like, and I think I'm like a visual person when I write and when I talk to people about stuff like this. So I kind of think about it as that last episode of the first season in Atlanta where things were kind of moving up for Earn. But he was like, yeah, everything's cool. We're going to work this out. And then he was living in the
storage unit.
Yeah. When things started going for me, I was back at my mom and dad's house. So he was just like, this is going to work out or what? But it has. And, so I'm more like stable and everything now. And it has worked out. And I'm the best father I could be. And that's the thing I kind of, like when you are married, you with somebody, like once you have a child, that kind of trumps everything. It's more so about being a father than it is about being a husband or anything else. So definitely how I look at it.
Yeah, I mean, I think kind of the thing to take away from this episode, right, is to think about, like, I mean, we started this kind of crapshoot, you know, talking about Farrakhan and kind of the thing that he laid forth and saying that, like, in order for us to move forward, you know, the black family has to move forward. And in order for the black family to move forward, the black father has to step up, right? And so I think kind of in hearing all of you all's narratives, I think it kind of it gives a bird's eye view, so to speak, of like some of the issues and hassles that, you know, I think from afar may seem easy, or even in the case of Fooch, where I think people could look at you as the model and say like, hey, that's what I want. Even you go through things.
Still, yeah,
at times.
Man, still, it might look good, but I'm still a work in progress, definitely.
You know, and so I think kind of what I want our listeners and our viewers to take from this episode is just, you know, I don't necessarily want sympathy. I think what I would like is for people to realize that there's real consequences that come with fatherhood. Good, bad, and indifferent. And that those, you know, the responsibility of being a father is not something that, you know, does not come without trial and error. And that, you know, even when presented with certain obstacles, we kind of owe it to our community to kind of move forward and try to father our children as best as we can, despite whatever scenario personally we have with the mothers of our children. And so really, we try to spark a conversation today. We're missing two of our hosts. But in real life, man, if you're on YouTube, like, subscribe, hit us up on Twitter, hit us up on Facebook, any social media outlet. Instagram works as well. Let us know what you think about what we talked about today. And we're going to sign off. This is the Go Ill, Go Defenders, Naledge Born, Jua, Fooch, Ev. We out.
Peace.